At the center of the known galaxy, where rivers of ionized starlight twisted around the ancient pulsar called the Heart of Orion, floated the Citadel of Unity, a station so vast that entire cities existed within its outer rings. From a distance, it resembled a luminous flower blooming in the darkness, its crystalline spires reflecting the glow of countless suns while streams of civilian and military vessels flowed endlessly through its gravity corridors. For over 5 million years, this was the place where wars ended before they began, where empires signed peace beneath vaulted domes of living crystal, and where every intelligent civilization believed the future of the galaxy could be decided with reason rather than violence. Yet today, the magnificent citadel no longer felt like the heart of civilization. It felt like the center of a gathering storm. The corridors echoed with hurried footsteps, mechanical limbs striking polished floors beside soft-footed diplomats from worlds with weaker gravity. Emergency sirens remained deliberately silent to prevent panic, but everyone could sense the change. Massive holographic displays that once celebrated trade routes and scientific achievements now pulsed with crimson warnings. Entire sectors of the galactic map flickered in and out as communication relays failed one after another. The disappearance of a single star had become something far worse. It had become a question no civilization could answer. Within the Grand Convocation Chamber, more than 12,000 representatives occupied concentric platforms that rose like the petals of an enormous metallic flower. Species of impossible diversity sat shoulder to shoulder, towering beings formed of living stone, shimmering entities whose bodies shifted like liquid light, feathered scholars from low-gravity moons, synthetic intelligences housed inside elegant alloy frames, and aquatic ambassadors projecting themselves through hovering columns of water. Translation fields shimmered invisibly through the air, allowing every whisper to be understood instantly, yet the chamber felt strangely quiet. Conversations had become cautious. Even fear seemed reluctant to speak too loudly. Standing near the highest platform was Elder Karesh, one of the last surviving witnesses of an age so ancient that most historians dismissed it as legend. His silver skin bore intricate scars that glowed faintly beneath the chamber lights, each marking a memory preserved through rituals older than many civilizations themselves. He watched the panicked delegates with tired eyes, remembering another gathering long ago, another council, another impossible warning that had been ignored. The echoes of that failure had haunted him for millions of years. His gaze slowly shifted across the chamber until it settled upon a solitary human. Commander Elena Ward stood alone without ceremony or escort. Unlike the elaborately dressed ambassadors surrounding her, she wore a dark naval uniform marked only by Earth's simple insignia and a handful of service ribbons whose meanings no one else understood. Her posture remained calm, almost unnervingly so, despite the fear spreading through the chamber. She neither argued nor defended humanity against the suspicious glances directed toward her. She simply watched the enormous holographic galaxy rotating above the council floor, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, her thoughts churned like a collapsing star. It's happening faster than predicted. Every missing signal, every vanished patrol, every silent observatory confirmed what Earth's deepest classified reports had feared for decades. Humanity had hoped the Council would have more time, months, perhaps years, to prepare. Instead, the first domino had already fallen. She remembered the final briefing before leaving Earth. No speeches. No promises. Only one quiet instruction from High Command. If the stars begin disappearing, tell them the truth. Even if they hate us for it. A soft vibration spread beneath everyone's feet. The chamber lights dimmed for less than a second. Above them, the galactic projection updated itself. Another star vanished. Then another. A ripple of horrified whispers swept across the assembly as entire constellations began blinking out one by one, like candles extinguished by an unseen hand moving silently through the darkness. Commander Ward closed her eyes for the briefest moment. There would be no more hiding. The secret humanity had carried alone for 2 centuries was about to become the burden of an entire galaxy. The first distress call arrived before the Council had even recovered from the latest vanished stars. It burst through the Citadel's communication network as a fractured stream of static, fragmented images, and terrified voices speaking over one another in dozens of different languages. The transmission originated from the frontier colony of Verex Prime, a prosperous mining world orbiting twin blue suns nearly 40,000 light-years from the Council. At first, the operators assumed the signal had been corrupted by a solar storm. Then the visual feed stabilized for just 3 horrifying seconds. The planet was still there, but its sky was wrong. The stars above had disappeared, replaced by an endless curtain of perfect black that swallowed every trace of light beyond the atmosphere. Before anyone could respond, the transmission cut to silence. Verex Prime never contacted the galaxy again. Within minutes, reports began arriving from every direction. Patrol fleets failed to report in. Deep space listening stations went dark without warning. Merchant convoys vanished along routes that had remained safe for thousands of years. Entire sectors of the quantum communication network flickered and collapsed as though invisible hands were severing reality itself. Emergency dispatch centers became overwhelmed, their halls echoing with overlapping alarms and desperate requests for assistance. Every update painted the same impossible picture. There were no battles. No explosions. No enemy signatures. Things simply stopped existing. Fear spread faster than any starship. Throughout the Grand Convocation Chamber, delegates abandoned protocol. Admirals demanded immediate mobilization of every military fleet in the galaxy. Politicians shouted accusations across the chamber, insisting rival empires must have developed a forbidden superweapon. Scientific councils proposed impossible theories involving dimensional fractures, false vacuum decay, or experimental technologies gone catastrophically wrong. None of the explanations survived more than a few minutes before new evidence destroyed them. Commander Elena Ward remained silent. She watched the panic unfold with growing dread because she recognized something the others did not. This wasn't an invasion. It was a feeding pattern. Her clenched fists remained hidden behind her back as memories surfaced from classified Earth briefings, grainy reconnaissance footage recovered from expeditions beyond the silent frontier, recordings deemed too dangerous for anyone outside the highest levels of command. Entire solar systems had vanished without resistance. Not conquered. Not destroyed. Consumed. A vibration passed through the chamber once again. Another sector of the holographic galaxy dimmed. This time, dozens of stars disappeared together. The room fell into stunned silence. Then Elder Karesh spoke. Without waiting for permission, the ancient survivor crossed the chamber toward a section of the Citadel few delegates had ever noticed. Behind ceremonial banners stood an immense stone doorway carved into the station's oldest foundation, hidden beneath countless renovations across the ages. Its surface was covered with symbols no modern translation system could decipher. The elder pressed his scarred hand against the weathered stone. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the doorway slowly groaned open. A rush of cold, stale air escaped from a chamber sealed for millions of years. Torches of pale blue energy ignited one after another, revealing endless walls lined with forgotten tablets, crystalline memory vaults, and colossal statues whose faces had been deliberately erased. Dust floated through the still air like drifting ghosts. This archive, Karesh whispered, was hidden after the first extinction. Historians stared in disbelief. There had never been any record of a first extinction. The elder approached a towering monolith at the center of the chamber. Ancient symbols illuminated beneath his trembling fingertips before transforming into holographic images of civilizations unlike any known today. Magnificent worlds. Towering cities. Fleets numbering in the millions. Then, darkness. Every image ended the same way. Stars vanished. Worlds fell silent. Entire species disappeared so completely that even their names dissolved from history. The final recording activated on its own. An ancient figure, its species impossible to identify, looked directly into the projection as though speaking across millions of years. Its voice was weak. Resigned. "If you are seeing this, then we failed." A long pause followed. Then came the sentence that froze every soul inside the hidden archive. "If humanity has awakened it." The recording distorted beneath violent waves of static. Nothing can stop what follows. No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time since the stars began disappearing, the council realized they were no longer debating a future catastrophe. They were witnessing the final chapter of a story that had already destroyed civilizations long before their own had ever learned to look at the stars. The hidden archive fell into absolute silence. The ancient recording dissolved into static, leaving only the faint hum of the Citadel's ancient power systems echoing through the cavernous chamber. Thousands of delegates stood frozen beneath the towering monolith, unable to reconcile what they had just witnessed. Civilizations older than memory had existed. They had reached heights beyond imagination. And they had been erased so completely that even history itself had forgotten them. Every comforting belief the Galactic Council had built over millions of years suddenly felt fragile. Every assumption about their place in the universe crumbled beneath the unbearable realization that they were not standing at the beginning of a crisis. They were standing at the end of someone else's. All eyes slowly turned toward the lone human. Commander Elena Ward felt their gaze before she looked up. Suspicion. Fear. Accusation. Desperation. She had expected anger. She had prepared herself for blame. But what she saw in their faces was worse. Hope. They believed humanity had answers powerful enough to save them. The weight of that expectation pressed against her chest harder than any battlefield ever had. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped into the center of the chamber. Her boots echoed sharply against the polished black floor, each step carrying across the immense hall like the ticking of a countdown no one could stop. The holographic galaxy hovered above her, now scarred with widening regions of darkness where entire stellar clusters had vanished. Tiny warning symbols spread across the projection faster than the Council systems could update them. When humanity first crossed the silent frontier, Elena began quietly, "We thought we had discovered untouched space." Her voice remained calm, but inside she relived every classified report she had spent decades trying to forget. "Our explorers found dead galaxies." Images appeared above her as Earth unlocked files never intended to leave its military archives. Fleets of sleek human exploration vessels drifted through endless cosmic graveyards. Planets still circled dead stars. Gigantic orbital structures floated intact without a single living inhabitant. Entire civilizations had vanished so suddenly that meals remained untouched on tables, lights still burned inside abandoned cities, and autonomous machines continued maintaining worlds whose creators had disappeared centuries earlier. There were no bodies, Elena continued. No battlefields. No evidence of war. Only silence. The chamber remained perfectly still. Then another image appeared. It showed something no one present had ever imagined. Beyond the observable edge of the universe, where mathematics itself seemed to unravel, sensors captured an impossibly vast distortion moving between galaxies. It possessed no stable shape. At times it resembled flowing darkness. At others, fractured geometry that twisted faster than perception could follow. Entire star systems dimmed as it passed, not because it destroyed them, but because reality itself seemed to fold inward around its presence. "We called it the Horizon Predator." A scientist interrupted. "What is it?" Elena slowly shook her head. "We still don't know." Another delegate whispered, "A weapon?" "No." "A machine?" "No." "A living organism?" She hesitated. "Maybe." The uncertainty frightened the Council more than any answer could have. "It doesn't invade worlds," she explained. It doesn't conquer civilizations. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't even recognize life the way we do. She looked directly at Elder Koresh. It responds to one thing. Advanced intelligence. A ripple of disbelief swept through the chamber. The more civilizations connect, the stronger the signal becomes. Every quantum network. Every faster-than-light gateway. Every stellar engineering project. Together they create a pattern. She paused. A beacon. The room grew colder. It isn't hunting planets. It's hunting civilizations that become visible. Every delegate instinctively looked upward toward the holographic galaxy. For millions of years, they had celebrated unity. Shared knowledge. Shared technology. Shared communication. Without ever realizing they had been broadcasting their existence into the deepest darkness beyond creation. We discovered that truth 200 years ago, Elena said softly. And from that moment on, images changed again. Hidden shipyards buried inside rogue planets. Artificial stars masking impossible industrial complexes. Secret fleets assembled beyond mapped space. Entire human colonies disappearing from public records. We stopped exploring. We stopped celebrating our discoveries. We erased our own expansion from galactic databases. We sacrificed worlds you never knew existed. Every sentence struck the chamber harder than the last. For 2 centuries, she whispered, humanity has fought a war no one else even knew had begun. The projection suddenly flashed crimson. Another wave of stars vanished. Not dozens this time. Hundreds. Emergency alarms erupted throughout the Citadel as entire sectors of the galaxy disappeared from every map simultaneously. Elena closed her eyes. The calculations she had feared were now undeniable. She opened them again, her voice barely louder than a whisper. We thought we were buying you time. She looked across the terrified faces surrounding her. We were wrong. It wasn't coming. It followed us. The alarms had barely begun to fade when every light inside the Citadel dimmed. For one long, breathless moment, the vast station seemed to lose its connection to the stars themselves. Then the panoramic walls surrounding the Grand Convocation Chamber transformed into a live view of deep space. Countless delegates instinctively turned toward the darkness beyond the crystal hull, and what they saw stole every remaining word from their lips. Space was moving. Not ships. Not fleets. The darkness itself. An ocean of impossible black flowed between distant stars like liquid night, swallowing light without haste or violence. Entire constellations bent inward as though reality had become soft, their brilliant colors stretching into thin ribbons before vanishing forever. No explosions echoed through the void. No weapons flashed. It was terrifying precisely because it happened in complete silence. Then Earth's emergency transmission activated. For the first time in history, every classified military network, every hidden satellite, every secret command bunker and deep space fortress synchronized into a single broadcast visible across the entire galaxy. A calm voice spoke. This is Earth Strategic Command. If this message has reached the Galactic Council, Protocol Last Horizon is now in effect. The stars behind the transmission shifted. One after another, massive distortions appeared across interstellar space. At first they resembled tiny gravitational anomalies. Then they unfolded. Millions of human warships emerged from folds in spacetime unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. They did not arrive through conventional jump gates or hyperspace corridors. Space itself opened around them like tearing fabric, revealing armadas that had remained hidden beyond known reality for generations. Sleek black hulls reflected almost no light. Gigantic carriers stretched hundreds of kilometers from bow to stern. Titan-class fortresses surrounded artificial singularities held inside impossible containment rings. Every vessel bore the same simple blue insignia of Earth. The council stared in stunned disbelief. Humanity had not built a defensive fleet. They had built an entire civilization dedicated to one war. Commander Elena Ward watched the broadcast with quiet eyes. Many of the fleet designations scrolling across the display were familiar. She recognized old Academy classmates now commanding battle groups. Friends she had laughed with. Officers who had disappeared into classified assignments decades earlier. Some names belonged to people officially declared dead. None of them had died. They had simply never been allowed to come home. A second transmission interrupted the tactical feed. An elderly woman appeared wearing the insignia of Fleet Marshal. Her weathered face showed neither fear nor triumph. Only acceptance. For 217 years, she said softly, humanity has delayed the inevitable. Behind her, thousands of crew members moved calmly through the command bridge as stars disappeared beyond the observation windows. We have learned one truth. You cannot destroy what lives outside reality. A pause. But you can imprison it. Across millions of kilometers, the hidden fleet accelerated. Not toward safety. Toward the advancing darkness. The council watched as colossal human vessels arranged themselves into geometric formations spanning entire star systems. Artificial singularity engines ignited one after another, each releasing controlled gravitational waves powerful enough to make nearby suns tremble. Massive Dyson arrays hidden around forgotten stars activated simultaneously, channeling unimaginable energy into a lattice that stretched across interstellar space like a glowing web. Every calculation displayed inside the Citadel reached the same conclusion. The maneuver had no survival probability. Commander Ward already knew. She whispered the words before the computer did. They're sealing the prison. One by one, the singularity cores overloaded. Entire stars collapsed under carefully engineered gravitational pressure, their immense mass transformed into anchors that folded space inward around the approaching entity. Reality screamed in ways no living mind had language to describe. The darkness resisted. For the first time since recorded existence, the impossible predator reacted. The galaxy heard it. Not through sound, but through thought. A wave of unbearable despair swept across every conscious being, ancient and young alike, as something older than time cried out against its confinement. Human ships began disappearing. Not destroyed. Consumed by the collapsing prison they had created. Still they advanced. Still they held formation. Still they refused to retreat. Across every communication frequency, thousands of human captains transmitted the same final message, not as an order, but as a promise carried calmly into eternity. If tomorrow belongs to someone, let it belong to everyone. Then the singularity lattice closed. The darkness vanished. The stars fell silent. And with them, the fleet that had stood alone between the galaxy and oblivion. Years passed before the galaxy truly understood the price of its survival. At first there was only silence, the kind that follows a storm so immense that even memory struggles to describe it. Trade routes slowly reopened. Emergency colonies became thriving worlds once more. Communication relays, painstakingly rebuilt across thousands of light years, lit the darkness with renewed streams of light. In regions where entire constellations had once vanished, newborn stars began to ignite from the remnants of collapsed nebulae, painting the heavens with colors unseen for millions of years. Children born after the Great Silence looked up at those skies without knowing they existed only because countless strangers had chosen never to return. The galaxy had survived, but it would never again be the same. The Galactic Council itself changed beyond recognition. The magnificent Citadel of Unity, once decorated with banners celebrating political alliances and economic prosperity, became something far more solemn. Its grand halls were transformed into living memorials. Every chamber contained holographic archives preserving the stories of worlds that had nearly been erased. Ancient rivalries dissolved as former enemies stood side by side rebuilding shattered civilizations. Species that had spent centuries competing for influence now shared technology freely, understanding that survival had never belonged to one empire alone. At the center of the council's highest dome, where a monument to the founders had once stood, rose a single sphere of polished obsidian. Inside it shimmered millions of tiny lights, each representing one human life willingly given during the final operation. No names were displayed according to rank or status. Every light shone with equal brilliance, a quiet reminder that history is often carried by ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Commander Elena Ward rarely attended the ceremonies held in humanity's honor. She spent most of her days traveling through recovering systems, helping refugees return home and overseeing reconstruction efforts on worlds that had once seemed doomed. Yet there was one journey she could not avoid. Nearly a decade after the final battle, Elder Koresh requested permission to visit Earth. It would be his last voyage. Time had finally caught up with the ancient witness whose memory stretched across forgotten ages. Elena welcomed him personally as his small vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, where oceans reflected peaceful skies untouched by war. For the first time since they had met inside the council chamber, neither of them carried the unbearable weight of impossible decisions. Only remembrance. Together they traveled to a quiet valley overlooking endless green hills where no towering monuments pierced the sky. There were no colossal statues of heroes. No triumphant war memorials. Instead, countless simple stone markers stretched across the landscape, each bearing nothing more than a name, a date, and a place once called home. The wind moved gently through rows of young trees planted by families who had lost sons, daughters, parents, and friends in a war the galaxy had never known existed. Birds sang between the branches, their voices replacing the alarms and distant explosions that had haunted Elena's dreams for years. Koresh walked slowly among the memorials, running his scarred fingers across weathered stone as though trying to memorize every sacrifice. His ancient eyes, which had witnessed civilizations rise and vanish, filled with tears he no longer tried to hide. At the highest point of the valley stood a single wall of dark granite facing the sunrise. Unlike the countless memorial stones surrounding it, this monument carried no list of victories, no account of battles won, and no declaration of humanity's greatness. Carved into its surface were only a few simple words that generations of visitors had traveled across the galaxy to read. Elder Koresh stood before the inscription for a long time without speaking. When he finally read it aloud, his voice barely rose above the whispering wind. We were warned. So were they. The difference, we listened. He closed his eyes. For millions of years, his people had believed wisdom meant preserving knowledge. Humanity had taught him something greater. Wisdom meant acting upon it. As the first rays of morning sunlight spread across the valley, children from dozens of alien worlds arrived carrying small flowers gathered from their own home planets. They placed them quietly beneath the memorial wall, not because humanity had been the strongest species in the galaxy, nor because it had possessed the greatest weapons, but because it had refused to let others face extinction alone. From that day forward, every civilization that reached the stars learned the same lesson before joining the Galactic Council. They were told of the vanished fleet, the silent sacrifice, and the species that had stood against the darkness when every calculation declared hope impossible. And whenever young explorers looked toward the endless unknown with fear in their hearts, they remembered the words etched into history by those who never came home. The universe would always hold mysteries older than time. There would always be another horizon. Another darkness. Another impossible choice. But somewhere, carried in every sunrise across every world that still existed, humanity had left behind a truth stronger than fear itself. Heroes are not remembered because they were destined to win. They are remembered because, when the entire galaxy believed it was already too late, they stood anyway.